Good afternoon. This is Bob Zura chatting with you from New Orleans, Louisiana. I hope everybody's safe. Biovenus and I have been talking about these uncertain times in fracture healing and fracture care during this time, and so we decided we wanted to talk to you about EXOGEN and fracture healing in these uncertain times. As means of disclosure, I'm a paid consultant for Biovenus and for Osteocentric Technologies. This COVID-19 pandemic is really unprecedented in our medical careers for everyone who's still practicing, I believe. While our medicine and emergency department colleagues are really on the front lines and our nursing colleagues are very much so on the front lines, I think it's important to recognize them, but I don't think that the orthopedic role should be minimized. What we're doing is not minimal, and our residents around the country are backing up these services and these teams. I have a resident who's been deployed to the ICU this week. We continue to see trauma, we continue to see fracture care, we continue to see tumors and other injuries. So while not front lines, it's not, orthopedics shouldn't be minimized in this event. The immediate impact that we're all facing, and Mo Bandari and I did a webinar yesterday, and he reported to me that he's talked to folks all over the globe, and this is happening everywhere. There's really minimal to no surgery happening. It is site dependent, it's resource dependent, it's specialty dependent, where orthopedics is probably doing more than some other specialties, and it's peak time dependent. I think when we were hitting our peak a week or two ago, we were much more anxious about doing any cases than we are today. This was our mandate from our governor, stopping all surgeries that were elective, and some definitions of bodily harm that we had to meet in order to do a surgery. The patients who suffer bodily harm, I'm sure everybody has something similar in their state. Our academy is sending out messaging as well that helps us define what's urgent, what's not, what should be done and shouldn't. But again, this is very variable for many of the reasons we talked about. It's unknown. We don't know how long this is going to last. We don't know what resources we have now, what resources we have once we're allowed to start working again. Who can we care for now, and who can we care for when we start back up? And what are we missing? What fractures, what injuries are sitting at home that will show up as a gift in 2, 3, 4 weeks or months whenever we get back to work? It's unknown when we return. It's unknown how we return as we meter out resources and care. And who goes first will be defined by injuries or specialty or payers, God forbid. I think regardless, we know there's going to be a fracture impact. What type and when, I don't know. Will this be a series of malunions or non-unions or delayed unions or other? I'm not sure. But regardless, we know that we're going to be seeing neglected fracture care. And what are our resources and tools for taking care of that? So I think all of us are in the starting block, getting ready to go as soon as they give us the go-ahead. But what are we going to see? I think we may see some fresh fractures that we're seeing now that have been delayed. And so they're at risk because they've had some delayed treatment. And perhaps the patients will have different demands that add different sorts of risk. Perhaps they won't want surgery for things that you recommend surgery for, and you'll have to pull out that arsenal of non-operative treatment, which may include something like a bone growth stimulator. They may demand that they return to work as quickly as possible because they, like us, need to get a paycheck again. So maybe you'll want something that accelerates fracture care. We'll address that directly in a bit. What about your delayed non-unions? You want to get those to heal. We're going to see more of those without a doubt, and these patients will want to get back to work. So what options could you have for them? But we really all, including our patients, just want to get going again. So a quick case just to walk through, because I think this may be similar to a case that we see in a few weeks. 69-year-old male came to see me 7 months after injuring his ankle while playing golf and been treated locally, but he was still hurting. Here's a magnified view of his x-ray when he came to see me. I wasn't sure if I was dealing with a non-union. I thought maybe there were trabeculi crossing that fracture line or that non-union line. So I got a CT scan. And that confirmed my suspicions that he did have a non-union. And I think it shows a minimally displaced non-union with persistent fracture lines. But even more importantly, there's endosteal sclerosis in the medullary canal. So because of this CT scan, I actually advised the patient to have surgery. I didn't think that he would heal without intervention surgically to get rid of that sclerosis. He'd driven across the state to see me, but didn't like my opinion. He insisted on non-operative care, so we discussed other options, and that came down to us discussing EXOGEN with him. We talked about that. And he liked the idea of a non-invasive treatment. He liked that it was 20 minutes a day, so we went with that. And he returned 3 months later to see me, and you can see on his plain films that he's had some changes that are consistent with bony healing. He was feeling better, he wasn't hurting, walking better. But because I couldn't tell day one if he was healed or not, I'd ordered a CT scan even before the plain films. And these are those images. We have a series of 2 here, but you can see his old CT on the left and the new one 3 months later on the right. And what you can see is that fracture line has been eradicated, but more importantly, that endosteal sclerosis seen best on this view has been resolved. So somehow EXOGEN has upregulated not only osteoblasts to affect healing, but osteoclasts to resorb that sclerosis. So this was a real game changer for me in my practice, seeing this patient and from months 7 to 10, removing that sclerosis and going on to heal and resolving his pain. So EXOGEN, these are the indications for EXOGEN. I think it's important to recognize that there are both non-union and fresh fracture indications, the only bone growth stimulator with both of those indications. It is a safe product. There are no known contraindications for EXOGENs. There have been some occasional reports of the gel being sensitive to patients, but again, no known contraindications. Hasn't been studied in all patient groups as listed below, but again, a safe product. Want to go quickly through 2 fresh fracture studies just to give you that background on why it has a fresh fracture indication, but may be pertinent to our practices. This is a Heckman study perspective, randomized, placebo-controlled, double-blinded, multi-center study looking at tibia fractures, very similar to Castillo's conclusion criteria. The treatment randomized to placebo or EXOGEN for 20 minutes a day, union defined as 3 bridge cortices, no pain on weight bearing or palpation. You can see the placebo group at the bottom in the gray bar, 150 plus days to heal, about 5 months, which makes sense for an adult tibia. The EXOGEN group healed 38% faster at 96 days, so an acceleration of 38% in this tibia study. Christensen study, very similar, also prospective, randomized, placebo-controlled, double-blinded, multi-center study, looking at distal radius fractures treated conservatively, and I think we're all treating more of those conservatively in this environment. Randomized to placebo or treatment of 20 minutes a day of EXOGEN with union being defined as 3 bridged cortices. You see the placebo group healed at about 98 days, which is the time for distal radius, different than the tibia, obviously, but the same acceleration of 38% down to 61 days for the EXOGEN group. Very importantly, in this distal radius study, is they also had less loss of reduction. So if they healed quicker, but also healed in better positions. So you can see this is statistically significantly different between the EXOGEN group and the placebo group. So less loss of reduction of those distal radiuses as well. Non-union, I think we're going to be seeing non-unions and delayed unions in our practices very soon in greater numbers. It's harder to do a good non-union study. They tend to be a little bit more heterogeneous for a lot of reasons. I think that's easily understood. So we'll just walk through a couple of the studies to give you an idea of what EXOGEN can provide for you. So this is Mayer's study. They look at 36 non-unions and 64 delayed unions, so very clearly a heterogeneous population. Their inclusion criteria were stable vital fragments, no infections, could be atrophic or hypertrophic, at least 90 days from the last surgeries and at least 120 days since fracture. Only change in treatment, again, is they weren't randomized because all these patients need treatment because they have a non-union. Was EXOGEN for 20 minutes a day. And you can see their overall heal rate of just adding EXOGEN in these non-unions was 86%. Atrophic 83%, hypertrophic 100%. Similar data here from Nolte study. Again, a prospective case series of 29 non-unions, heterogeneous group, mean fracture age was 1.2 years old, and mean time of a year since their last surgery. Patients averaged 1.4 failed surgeries, only change of treatment was EXOGEN for 20 minutes a day. We repeated numbers again, which is sort of nice, 86% overall heal rate. 82% of the smokers went on to heal. And I think that's just important to keep in the back of your mind. EXOGEN seems to mitigate high-risk patients and make them heal like normal patients. So give them your challenging patients. Those who never smoked, 100% went on to heal. The Gebauer study, this is a great study. If you want more information on it, biovenetists can provide details of every single one of these patients, and there's some pretty impressive non-unions in this series. It's a series of 67 non-unions. Their inclusion criteria, again, stable, no infection, at least 8 months since fracture, and at least 4 months since the last intervention, and at least 3 months with no radiographic healing. The mean fracture age was 39 months, so the average fracture age in this group was over 3 years old and a mean of 2 failed surgeries. Only change in treatment was 20 minutes a day of EXOGEN, with an 89% treatment compliance rate. I think that's important for whatever modality you choose for your patients, that they use it. Given the low number of minutes for EXOGEN treatment and the calendar and some other changes on the device, compliance is very high. You can see the union of these 67 non-union, 85% went on to heal with adding EXOGEN for 20 minutes a day. One final thought here is that we're all conserving resources in different ways. So if we can save money for our system and for our society, that may be a real benefit. This is a great study from Samir Mehta that he did, a health plan database study, and he compared non-union treatment with EXOGEN to non-union surgery. And they matched 1,158 pairs and followed those patients out. And the surgery-only patients had a total medical costs that were $6,289 higher than the liposome-only patients. So for that and for other reasons, some other health systems around the world actually recommend EXOGEN as first-line treatment for non-unions. So you can have the opportunity to save money for your system and society, which is perhaps a little bit bigger motivation right now. That's all I have for you, trying to not take too much of your time. We all have a lot of webinars. If you want more information, you go to biovenetistacademy.com and have other videos and other educational resources. There is an EXOGEN conversation on Doc Matter if you're on there, and you could have a peer-to-peer conversations with myself and other KOLs. And to connect with your local representative, you can reach out to exogen.com. So again, thank you for your time. I hope you're all safe and take care.